I'm Hugo. I'm co-founder and CEO here at Minima. Really good to have you all here. We've got a lot to get through in this call, but we've also got some really good community questions. So our aim is to absolutely give that enough time to answer those questions as well. So we'll kick off. But what I wanted to do was just sort of look at where we are now. We're almost halfway through 2025. It's been an intense first half of the year. First we had the initial euphoria of the Bitcoin all-time high at the end of last year, and then came the meme coin bubble burst when Trump and Melania sucked all the liquidity out of the market, and then tariffs became the great uncertainty as well. So added to this, relatively little new capital was really coming into the crypto market in general. It was really just moving from one project to another, and of course the sideways movement in April was particularly painful. But things are looking up. But at the same time, in talks with sort of a lot of investors and stuff like that, there's a general feeling that investors are now more interested currently in sort of projects outside of crypto, like defense and robotics, for example. But on the plus side, in the US, they seem to be making huge strides in terms of creating more pro-crypto environment. Because I've been meeting with a few people in the last couple of weeks who've met directly with the SEC and with other US agencies directly involved with digital assets. And they've all come back blown away by the pace that they're working at and how positive and proactive they're being. So, I think that can only be a good thing for crypto in general. And at the same time, another interesting thing's happening in crypto, that people seem to be going back to 101 use cases, and these are gaining traction. I mean, obviously with stable coins and the Genius Act and the incredible success of Circle's IPO last week, which outperformed Meta and Airbnb and Robinhood with 100 to 300% surge over 2 days. So all of that stuff seems to be really good. And equally as well, on the remittance side, again, sort of stablecoin related, but Plasma's new launch for global remittances as well seemed to be really interesting for people as well. So people seem to have moved away from meme coins and going back to what blockchains are really used for, or really suitable for as well. And this obviously suits us at Minima very well, because we've always been all about getting the very basics of what a blockchain is good at right. So complete decentralization and the immutable record of transactions taking place. While other projects have had incredible success capitalizing on the next big thing, we've always stuck true to our original premise that decentralization is the main USP of a blockchain. Minima was born out of a very long-term vision, Paddy's vision. And while it at times has meant that we've missed out on short-term investment excitement and interest, it has meant as we move to a place now where blockchain is starting to find its place in the real world, we don't have to pivot to be ready, because it's what we've always been building for. So I feel very sort of, bullish about that. As we see devices becoming more intelligent through AI, and they'll be making decisions based on their localized awareness and analysis, these devices, where they're phones, cars, sensors, they'll need to take action based on these decisions, whether it's making a payment or collecting or emitting data. And these payment points, these data points rather, need to be verifiable. And this is what a blockchain is good at. But equally, though, I think that what people are now realizing, investors particularly, that as with all technological journeys, form factors shrink. And so it's going to be the blockchain that is designed to get stronger and more secure as these form factors shrink. That's where the future is going to lie. So I feel like we're perfectly placed for that. And I'm happy to say that, after the craziness of the meme coin frenzy, investors are showing a real interest in our long-term vision, the ability to add value to other technological advances that are taking place, AI among them. And I've been in the Middle East and in Asia meeting investors over the last couple of months. And my observation is that unlike the West, investors in the East don't think in 4-year cycles, they think in centuries. And they see the potential that Minima has to offer to be future-proof, and the utility and the value that Minima will deliver. And as a result, we've had some very good meetings with some very serious long-term investors, and we have more lined up as we speak. And I also wanted to take this opportunity right now to shout out to the community, especially in China and the Middle East, for helping set up these conversations in motion. Because we've got some really impressive and well-connected community members that believe in what we're building, and it is genuinely an honour to be working with them. So thank you for all your help on that, and please do come forward if you have connections that you think would be interested in what we're building. And of course, I'm sure a lot of you will be aware that while decentralization will give us the winning formula for the long term, in order to stay completely decentralized, Minima doesn't have an on-chain income. And this does create issues for OPEX and for sustainability to drive projects forward. But last week was a very important moment for us to help us strengthen this conundrum. Because we did two things. Firstly, we launched our first revenue-generating product Integritas, and Adam will go through more detail on this in later in the session. And the second is that we launched as part of Integritas launch. We also launched our Minima Success Framework. It will be the blueprint for future products coming directly from Minima. So while revenue generation will help deliver sustainability, our Minima Success Framework will drive token holder value. So when for example Integritas will be charged out on a subscription model and will be paid in fiat or stables, what it means is that the success model means that a proportion of these subscriptions, and in the case of Integritas it will be 50%, the proportion of these subscriptions will be used to buy Minima from the open market for API calls, creating buy pressure. Also, unspent Minima will be burned at the end of each month, reducing supply. And then finally, spent Minima will be used to fuel the yield on Maximize, giving us direct link between platform usage and value for Minima holders. So again, we're very excited about this framework. We feel like it fuses together the commercial reality of revenue generation, but also driving token holder value as well. And it's been a long journey for us, but we have stayed true to our original white paper. Those of you who've been with us since the beginning will know that. And I'm more confident than ever that this approach will prevail and give us what we want to be, which is the embedded blockchain for all connected devices. It's the thing that in the dark times keeps me focused, and I know that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. So, it's exciting times, and I think this half of the year should hopefully be a really positive one in general, but also specifically for Minima too. So it's great to have you here. I will be going through all your questions at the end of this session, but for now I will hand you over to Adam, who's going to give you more information specifically on Integritas, and then Luke will give you an update on the comms and the community initiative, and Paddy will give you an update on the Omnia work that we've been doing as well. So over to you, Adam.
Thank you, Hugo. And let me just share my screen. So everybody, I'm very pleased to introduce the launch of our project Integritas. Please go and see the Integritas website, but let me just give you a 30-second trailer of what Integritas does. Data is everywhere, but can you trust it? To be trusted, data must be verified. Integritas anchors your data to the blockchain, immutable, verifiable, and cryptographically secure. From the edge to the cloud, Integritas makes every data point provable. Proof is no longer optional. It's demanded. In a world run on data, only verified data can be trusted. Integritas delivers it. Secure and verifiable. Okay, so what is Integritas? Integritas is a data integrity and verification platform. And it's got two main components. The first is Integritas Stamp, which hashes or anchors data to the blockchain. And the second is a search engine, which allows third parties to independently verify and validate the data. So Integritas consists of a hashing function, a search engine, and then the ability to search for results and generate report. And this will have applications for a vast variety of industrial verticals. And what our vision is that Integritas will be the gold standard for verified data. So it is able to establish data integrity, build verifiable infrastructure. And as we keep mentioning in the calls, the real purpose of a blockchain is censorship resistance and verification of actual data. So we see a number of use cases where this is going to be used more and more in machines and vehicles and IoT. The ability to verifiably prove data for AI models, and of course in deep-in projects. And interestingly, our first commercial traction is in the legal area, where legal companies are interested in time stamping and verifying legal documents. So for a user, it is a very simple procedure to hash, verify, and validate. And on our Integritas website, we show the technical documentation, and it leads the developers onto the comprehensive docs showing how to install the API calls that interact directly with the Integritas timestamper. So, as we mentioned, this is our first commercial product. We have a pricing model that is very compelling for individuals and businesses. And as Hugo mentioned, we are very interested in promoting this, both from the point of Integritas itself, but also bringing back value to the community members and Minima holders. So we have introduced a referral program. So anybody who is using Integritas or is just interested in joining as an affiliate are able to generate a referral link, and you will receive 10% of the subscription revenue of anybody who subscribes using your link, an additional 2.5% of any customers that they bring on board. So 12.5% referral link, and this is valid for 2 years after the first subscription. And as we also mentioned, this is now tied to our new commercial framework, Minima Success Framework, where the ability to use tokens in Minima is able to bring value back to the Minima community. So, as Hugo mentioned, subscriptions for these projects will allow us to buy Minima out of the market. The unspent tokens will be burned at the end of each month, but the tokens that are used in the application of the products will then go into a yield-bearing app. So this is very exciting times for us, and we are very pleased to be able to launch this product. So thank you very much.
The other really important part of this is that this product was developed in conjunction with our partners at Volvo, who needed a solution like this. So this isn't us just creating a solution for the sake of it. This is actually industrial enterprise clients who have a real need. And so we're confident that we are delivering something that is required, rather than trying to find a problem that we have a solution for, if that makes sense. So, all the conversations that we're having now currently with our enterprise clients are going very positively. And again, we'll be updating you all on progress with that over the coming months.
So simply timestamping data on a chain is an old concept that has been done. I don't think it's been applied in a way that we've done it here and shown in such a nice package as we have done here. So that's nice. And when you show it to people, they don't know about these things. They don't know what's gone on before. So that's fine. But just timestamping data and just hashing data and putting it on chain is obviously the base case. But what you really want, which is what we're working on for the future versions of this, is that you may want to have other signatories on the timestamp data. There's actually other ways that you can put this data on a chain to improve the integrity. If what Integritas is about the integrity of the data, one of the questions that I, as a nerd, think of is, look, well, how do I know they haven't, timestamped 2 pieces of data? And how do I know that they're going to show me the piece that was the original piece and not the piece that they would like me to see later on? Because the data is just the hash of the data, you don't actually know what they're timestamping, which is a feature, not a bug. But then when you ask them to provide you with the speed of the car before the accident, when it was timestamped on the data, the car may have done 2 pieces of data and might show you the piece of data that it wants you to see so that it looks like it was going slower. And actually, this is why you need a company, because what you can get them to do is you can get them to sign the data as well. So you can have a co-signatory. You can almost have a sort of multi-sig time-stamped piece of data with a sequence number, which means that it's impossible for you to then fake the different sequence of events that occurred. And so what I'm trying to say is that even though this sounds like a simple project, there's actually a lot you can do with this. And this is a version 1, which will be very interesting to see. You know, the lawyers love it because they can, you know, make sure that a document was created on a certain day. That's what timestamping gives you, the ability to prove that something existed on a certain day. But it also gives you the ability to sequence events very much like a blockchain itself, so that you can't fake the order in which things happened. So a lot of tech still to come on the Integritas. So this is definitely a version 1, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing, you know, how far we can take this. There are other things we can do, but this is a great first step, you know. And I'd also like to shout out to, you know, Rasmus and Natalie, who have knocked this up in a, you know, and it looks beautiful. It's really nice, professional-looking piece of tech that I think Minima can be proud of, and they can be proud of too. So very good work, very nice.
Yeah, over to me. All right, let's start with some good news then. So since our last community call, we've seen a 30% bump in growth within the community. That's over 171,000 of you now following Minima and actively engaging across all platforms that we're on. That momentum, that energy that you bring, that's played a real part in helping us win Best Deepin project at the Digital Commonwealth Awards earlier this year. Now, this wasn't just a tech award. The judges looked at everything: our technology, use cases, partners, and community. So honestly, this award is as much yours as it is ours. So big congrats to all of you there. This growing community energy is arriving at just the right time, because we've got some initiatives coming up that I think you're all going to really want to get your teeth into, especially the Integritas affiliate program, which launched alongside Integritas itself. Quick reminder on that: with the program, you can earn 12.5% commission for any paying customers that you bring in via your affiliate link. And what's great is it doesn't just reward you, it feeds directly into the Minima Success Framework. Every new user buying through Integritas feeds directly into the Minima Success Framework, contributing to real demand for Minima, because a portion of their fee goes towards buying it from the open market. Also worth mentioning, the Integritas launch post on X itself has done brilliantly. We're closing in on 400k impressions on that post already, and that's in large part thanks to our ambassadors pushing it far and wide, so huge thanks to them. Speaking of which, we'll be shining a spotlight on our launch customers for Integritas over the next couple of weeks, so keep your eyes open for that. And if you're keen to join our ambassador program, good news, we're expanding that team, so look out for a call out on socials before the end of the month. One final thing from me then, and this one's important. A big piece of recent work that we've been doing is to make sure that when people discover Minima, they're finding the right token, native Minima, not wrap Minima. As many of you know, we fully migrated to native earlier this year and no longer support wrapped. But because wrapped has a longer track record, it was still showing up on platforms, and that's led to some confusion. And unfortunately, some people were still buying into the wrong asset. To combat that, we've worked with CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap to add messaging to the wrap listings, clearly stating that it's no longer supported and pointing to the proper migration process. We're now also in touch with Dex Tools and Dex Screener to get similar updates added there as well. And it's worth saying that if you still hold any wrap Minima, now is the time to migrate to native. It's a one-to-one swap, super simple, and available at native.minima.global. The fewer wallets holding wrap, the better for us and the better for you as well. So that's everything for myself. Over to you, Paddy.
Just a quick one to say that remember you can use the web wallet, the wallet.minima.global, if you have an iPhone
At the moment, bloody iPhones, which doesn't have the full Minima client, so you can have a web wallet with your native Minima. If you're using iPhone and you've got your wrap Minima in Coinbase or whatever it is, you can still hold native Minima by using the web wallet, which I might add can be logged into from anybody who runs a web wallet. So I run a web wallet on Spartacus Rex, Barry runs one on Eurobuddha, Minima runs one. Anybody who runs a Minima node with the -mega MMR parameter runs a web wallet. And so, the point about the web wallet was that it was meant to be a decentralized version of Coinbase, where you would run a version for your family or your friends, and they could then log into your system. Again, decentralization, that's the thing that matters. So You don't need to be running a full. It's obviously good to be running a full minima node, but if you can't do that, you can use your web wallet to host your native minima. Okay, so I'll just continue and talk a little bit about the tech. I've been asked to discuss a little bit about Omnia, so I'm down the rabbit hole at the moment, trying to write this first application, which uses our Omnia protocol. I'm not going to bore you all, since I did discuss this at length in one of our dev chats. And if you haven't seen that, please go to the website, to YouTube, where I think you'll find an awful recording of it. But if you just listen, then you'll get the gist of it, where I discuss Omnia, et cetera, But just to highlight some of the points about it, every blockchain has their way of saying, yeah, we can handle the traffic of the world. Yeah, so Solana has its way of doing it, and it says, yeah, we just squash everything onto layer 1. Ethereum has his way of saying it, and he says, yeah, we use loads of side chains. Bitcoin has its way of saying it, and it says, oh, yeah, we use Lightning, la, la, la. But what I would like to say is that I think when you look at all of these solutions, the best solution, and I would say this, but the ultimate solution is the solution that we are using, which is Omnia. And this is a derivative of the Lightning Network. This is what Bitcoin would like to have but can't. And I'm starting to think that I'm not sure it's going to be able to, given the current, the current political. It's not a technical challenge; it's a political challenge to see whether they're going to give us the functions we need to do it. Minima has the functions required for us to have this second version of the Lightning Network. And looking back, when you get the opportunity of hindsight and you can see, oh, look, we wrote the Lightning Network, but if we could only do this and this and this, it would be like 100 times easier for people to write code, et cetera. That's the L2 protocol. That's the one that Minima uses. And the reason that is so wonderful is because it is truly permissionless, which means that anybody can start an Omnia channel and close an Omnia channel between two people without having to speak to anybody. This is really, really important. Yeah, this is like the most important thing, frankly. And of all the protocols, other than Lightning, it is the one that scales. And when I use the word scale, it is 0, 1. It is a Boolean. It either can handle the traffic that the world could throw at it. Yeah, there's no limit to how many transactions Omnia between two people. You can send money backwards and forwards to each other as often as you like. And there is no limit on that. I used an example which actually got cut out of the video because they weren't recording it. I'm going to repeat it now, so just quickly, just so you understand. When I think of Omnia, what I'm thinking of, what I'm seeing, is every person on the planet gets together, and we say to them all, logistics aside, we get everybody on the planet, and we say, okay, I want you to be standing next to someone at 12 o'clock tomorrow, GMT tomorrow. I want you to be standing next to someone, everyone on the planet. And somehow they all agree. And I say, I want you to have a $1 bill in your hand. Yeah. So everybody on the planet, there's 8 billion of us, but we're all standing next to each other. So there's 4 billion pairs of people standing next to each other. And then at 12 o'clock, I want you all to take that $1 bill and I want you to give it to the person you're standing next to. That's it. And what's interesting about that thought experiment is that it sounds silly. It sounds like, well, what's that going to do? Well, actually, we've just done 4 billion transactions in 1 second. And you're going to go, well, but those are valid transactions. You have given someone $1. And what's interesting is that it hasn't broken. There's no limit. We could have asked everybody in this, if we were a galactic society, you could have asked everybody in the galaxy, if you could have timed it correctly, to do that. And this is what Omnia gives you. Yeah, there is no blockchain that is involved in the process of doing an Omnia transaction. There is no side chain that I have to jump onto and off to do this. The point about Omnia is that it is a peer-to-peer protocol that not only scales in that everybody can do it at the same time, not only is it private because nobody knows that you're doing it, like cash. Yeah, the thing here is cash. We're trying to somehow emulate the beauty of the cash system. But it's also private. It's also scalable. It's also a system which at no point will break. Yeah, it's like there's no limit to how many people can do that. Now, if you ask me, that's a technology worth, that's the one that we need to go for. And that's what I'm writing. In fact, when I finish this, as always, my apps look a bit funky, but they're functionally work well. I think what we're going to try and do is we're going to see if we can break some records. And so we're going to distribute the application. We're going to give it to you all, and we're going to try and do that. We're going to try and do that little experiment I told you, where we're going to get all of you to get together. It works currently. My one works over Maxima. It doesn't have to, but I think Maxima is a good answer for this. And we're going to get everybody to try and line up at the same time, and everybody can try and do a transaction at the same time. And then we can see how many transactions we can do, over the period of 10 minutes, and see if we can, I've had a look on the web for world record for how many transactions go through, and it's a bit of a hack, I have to say, because all these chains say, yeah, we did 10,000, 100,000. I see Ton says it did 100,000 in a test environment using 512 shards, with each shard doing some ridiculous amount of transactions, and it's just like, that's nonsense. I hope you see that. It's just like that's impossible to do in any sort of decentralized way. If you said to me, set me up with the most powerful centralized MySQL database server, then yeah, I can do that many transactions, but that's not what this is meant to be. Yeah. So if you're asking me to just come up with a centralized system where I'm just going to be swapping numbers in a database, anybody can do that. Yeah. It needs to be done over your chain. It needs to be done in a decentralized way. It needs to be done, as always, with all of you running your system, running the blockchain on your phone, and then we can see how many transactions we can get to be done. And so that's going to be a nice, interesting challenge. We're trying to work out how to reward you all for doing this. And it's interesting because they're like, can you set up a server that gets sent a message whenever anybody does this? It's opt-in. If you don't want us to know, that's fine. But it's like, it's going to be difficult because if you start doing 50,000 transactions per second, the server will blow up. Yeah, it's actually going to be quite hard for me to be able to tell how many of you are doing this. So, might have to have some sort of staggered system where you send me some data which you've signed over a period of 24 hours, so you don't blow up the server that I point this to. But that's quite interesting. So that's where I am. What's interesting is that everything works. I've got the demo working, so that's nice. All the code works. It always did work. Just to say, this worked on day one. This worked in version 1.0.1. I know we're on 1.0.45 at the moment, 45 versions of the client, but we haven't had to add anything to this. It's just clever scripting, with a nice little mini dApp that does a little bit of the SQL stuff and a little bit of the Maxima stuff and blah, 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 blah. So all of this stuff is, perfectly functional. What I would like to say is, as I'm writing, this is probably one of the more complicated, if not the most complicated application I've tried to knock up as a mini dApp. And I noticed that I'd really like some really difficult applications to be written. I'd really like some devs to step up and try to do something that even I would be like, ooh, that's actually pretty cool. There's lots of things you can do with Minima. There's a lot of broadcast message systems, and there's a lot of this and that. But I'd really like some sort of technical Omnia. I'd love the DAI, some sort of stable coin, some sort of, you could do all of these things on Minima, and I'd love to be. And what I'm offering is that I would love to be involved in the design process, and I can give you my input on that. If anybody wants to write something that's a little bit complicated, and they want to ask, how would I go about writing something like this or something like that, then I would love to be involved to help you to come up with how to write that. But then I'd like you to write it. And that's something that I've been thinking about as I write this application. But yeah, Omnia, it's all working. I'm just writing this demo. Then we're all going to have a play with it, and we'll see if we can somehow come up with some really big number. Like if I wrote it, I could do a demo on my computer that probably hit 10,000 transactions per second, but it wouldn't be, that's not what I want. I want it to be running over the actual network. I want it to be running with people. That's where we can start to see the numbers. And I guess a world record would be important, although I don't know if it's helped Ton that much. I don't know anybody who's actually using any of these chains. But yeah, it's going well. I'm working on the demo, and I look forward to showing it to you all. And that will be our, example application about how we can handle millions of transactions per second, which is really the point, at some point, to see if we can do that. So thanks very much, and watch this space.
Thank you, Paddy. I was just about to say, I think we forgot to mention this, but we did have the hackathon in Turkey 2 weeks ago, which went really well. And if you'd like to find out more about it, Month3 actually mentioned it on one of the dev calls, so go to YouTube. But I was also going to attach that to you asking for complicated apps. I hope in the next iterations of the hackathons, perhaps there will be complicated apps that you'll be able to test and play with.
There's going to be big minimum rewards for people who can write, big, tricky, complicated apps. Yeah, that's what I'd like. I'd like how would you do I'm thinking about an application where you can have an oracle for a price on anything so that you can wrap the specific amount of minima. So if you wanted to create an ounce of gold, like not dye, but you wanted to do an ounce of gold, I have a very clear vision about how that could be written. There's just too many applications that I just can't write all of them. But if anybody would like to step up and say, look, I'll have a go at that, then let us know. And I'm sure we can do some nice minimal rewards, half up front, half on completion. Yeah.
Indeed. Hugo, did you have anything to say before we move to the questions?
No, I mean, it looks like we're making good time, so it gives us good time for the questions. That's all good. Shall I get into those then?
Absolutely.
If there are any other ones that come up, then feed them in. But we'll start. It's a sort of. I'll just read through them all and then answer them, or pass them over to other people to be answered. So the first question from British, thank you, is a question for Paddy or whoever wants to add thoughts. Do you think the minimum blockchain chip could be the icebreaker for true sustainable adoption for blockchain technology in smart cities? So I'll let you do that in a second, Paddy. From my perspective, I think the main thing about minima on chip is that for certain regulated markets, it's going to be the only way to get into production environment for things like automotive, energy, and smart city programs. Because at the moment, lots of blockchains are sort of playing around the periphery of actually getting into the real world. But actually, for certain environments where you have a critical tech stack, then you just can't put in software updates into these tech stacks. You need to be able to isolate blockchain functionality from the rest of the tech stack. And that's going to be the only way to do that is to actually have it running on chip. So you can actually isolate that. And obviously Minima is the only one that can run on that. So for us, it's a very sort of bullish way of looking at things. And I think that as always, regulation, love it or hate it, is a way to actually really drive innovation. And we've definitely positioning ourselves in the right place to be on the right side of that when big organizations really want to start adopting blockchain technology. Do you want to add anything to that, Paddy?
Yeah, I'll say two things actually. So the first thing is obviously liquidity is king. And so if you can get on a chip first, and if they can start using you first, then other people who want to install some sort of blockchain tech that allows them to share tokens or pay for microtransactions from machine to machine in the machine to machine economy, they're going to have to use Minima as well. Yeah. So we're well positioned there because Minima's finished. And so you can actually come up with a chip and say, look, this is the protocol. There is no change to it. No other blockchain can say this, especially in this new interesting quantum world that we are now facing, which seems to be, the staggering pace of innovation in the quantum sphere is very, very interesting, because I know lots of people that I follow who are very, very smart, and they always said, look, they'll never do it. They'll never crack this, and they'll never do this. And the problem with the integrity of the qubits is never going to be done. And frankly, as always, humanity is so ingenious that I think we are going to get there. And so now they're starting to eat. They're not saying much. So we don't have to change anything, and we are ready for that future. So getting us on our chip is good. Secondly, I have had a real play, and there's some very simple ways that you can actually do this without having to rewrite the entire rule book. So I tried to convert Minima into a WASM, using JChirp. So there's software out there that now converts any application into a WebAssembly program, and there are chips out there that run WebAssembly. So these are not small projects. I talk about these things as if it's I'll knock it up in a weekend, but these are big projects that need teams and whatever. And as much as I would love Minima to have the billions of pounds that Charles Hoskins gets to waste on Cardano, that we could set a proper team up to do this, but again, these aren't. It's funny because I don't think of these things as technical issues. It's like, God, how is this going to be done? It's more a question. It's the manpower. It's like, we can do it, but we need a team that can manage this. That you need a project manager and coders and blah blah blah, and that just takes money. And this really seems to be the sticking point. There's so many things that Minima would be fantastic at and would be great at, and if we had billions of pounds, then we could be doing all of those things, but we just don't. So we have to be very selective about what we're trying to do. But I think, I absolutely do believe that at some point the M2M economy, the machine-to-machine economy, is going to start to become the biggest player. Yeah, that is going to be where a lot of this stuff takes place, especially in this AI world. I'm not specifically saying clever AIs that sort of spend a wallet to pay each other. I'm talking about dumb computers that still have to pay other dumb computers to access their sensors. You know, what's the point of me having the sensor if I can pay you a millionth of a cent to get you to give me the information I need? Yeah, this is where the machine-to-machine economy, there'll be billions of machines doing this trillions of times a day. And if they can all be doing it over Omnia, paying each other, then the price of that machine comes down. So it becomes worthwhile for you not to install the sensor that this machine needs because it can pay another machine to give it that data because it's in the same locality. So all of these synergies of tech at some point are going to need some form of trusted value stroke token transfer. And I do believe that Minima is perfectly situated for filling that gap. But the fact that we haven't done it isn't because Minima is not capable of doing it. It's because we don't have the money to set the teams up to get on with it, to actually do it. And that's just where we are. And, if we continue, hopefully at some point we'll have the money to sort of fund these things. But yeah, very important, and we're well positioned. I don't see any issues from a technical point of view for us to do it. More a political, social issue, really.
Cool, thanks, Paddy. Next question, which actually has a similar answer to a certain on some of it, is from Haj1 Granby, saying Minima has real utility, all mobile nodes, embedded chip use, and serious partnerships like Siemens Arm. Yet the token is barely registering in the broader market. Meanwhile, meme coins and zero tech projects are getting billion-dollar valuations. The problem isn't the tech, it's visibility, exchange access, and total lack of marketing momentum. When are you going to stop building quietly and start aggressively pushing things, liquidity and messaging that actually gets attention in the broader crypto market? What concrete steps are being taken now, not just planned, to fix this disconnect before Minima gets left behind? Now, I don't disagree with a lot of that. I think that, you're right, that tech is only really a small part of the jigsaw. Marketing awareness, noise, and listings are crucial to our success. And the stark reality is all of these things require capital. And, as Paddy said, capital even for the additional devs. So that is the reason that I've been concentrating this year on capital raising, and we have been taking concrete steps to find the right investors with deep pockets, with the right vision to help bring in the capitals needed. These investors will have exposure to both equity in Minima AG, the issuing entity, but also as well to liquid tokens as well. So their incentives are going to be perfectly aligned with our Minima success framework as well. So, I don't have a magic wand, but I know that all these things need to be doing, and we need to get capital to do that. So that's what my focus has been on, basically.
Sorry, you go.
Did you want to say something else?
I just wanted to say that it's an interesting time for all of us ulterior coins. All of us have sort of stayed the same level. So whatever the level you were in when you started, when this last bull run started, the alt season hasn't kicked in. And I'm not really sure whether it is going to kick in. So I sort of see this as a general problem that a lot of coins, in fact, all other coins other than Bitcoin, are facing. So it's not specific to Minima, just that they maybe started with larger treasuries and more money. But I don't actually see any of them, breaking out of their current range of value. I completely agree that it is frustrating when you work on a project like Minima, which seems to have so much potential and so many wonderful things, why our coin price, which is the distillation of all the work that we do, it's as simple as that. When you look at a coin, the price of the market cap of the coin is really the number that defines you in this space. It's not just Minima, it's everybody. And, so if there was an easy answer, I think they'd all be doing it. And so you try to concentrate on what you can do,
Yeah, but I think, as I say, I mean, I think the investors that are now looking into the space are looking at proper long-term, real-world use cases, and form factor is everything. And we are in the right place for the right form factor as everything shrinks. So that's why we're having very positive conversations. So yeah, no, I feel good about it. Next question from Roma 9. Did you try a partnership with BYD? So as a lot of you know, we've now hired Bo Zhan as our general manager in China, and we're planning to work with a number of Chinese OEMs in addition to Zeekr. And so we'll be spearheading sort of engagements with industrial partners in China across a range of verticals. So yeah, absolutely, they will be on our list of people to talk to. Another question relating partly to that as well is Zeekr's from Swang 9157. Is Zeekr's charging station still an experimental stage, or can it be put to use? Again, it is still in pilot stage. They are. It is a slow process. As an organisation, they're going through their own sort of internal sort of reorganisations and everything like that. But we are absolutely in contact with them. They'll be sending us a wallbox charger for us to actually embed our nodes on those devices, and then we can take it to the next stage. Another question from British. Why do you think that Minima is the first blockchain protocol to use TX Power as consensus mechanism? This is the only way a blockchain can run in a full-on chip. Maybe the Minima team vision was far superior to others. I'll let you talk briefly on that, Paddy. I meant to say the word briefly, but I mean, also, where do you see Minima in the next 5 to 10 years? So, just to introduce that, as per our white paper, the original inspiration for collaborative rather than competitive proof of work was the IOTA project. That project, it didn't use a blockchain, but rather a Tangle, which is a DAG, a directed acyclic graph. But that approach didn't ever converge, so it didn't see that much success. So we took that collaborative approach and built it on a blockchain. And I think so we see that's why we're sort of taking the lead on that. And I think also being realistic, if we want to give a reason why others aren't trying this, is that this approach doesn't generate on-chain revenue. So it's hard to do and it's hard to finance. We've worked very hard to build this. And investors that we're talking to at the moment believe in this vision, and so as you heard earlier, we're close to success now on that investment side. And so I think that in 5 to 10 years' time, the vision that we have is to be embedded on all connected devices, truly decentralized value transfer layer that's powered by devices themselves and not by a group of centralized miners and stakers. So, I think that we have that vision and people are starting to really understand that. And that's where the investment conversations are really sort of gearing up, basically.
Yeah, I would say it's the game theory of it, isn't it? Because the competitive nature of the mining, which every other chain uses, does incentivize people to get on board because they can make money. Yeah, it's always about the money. Whereas the cooperative game that we play doesn't incentivize you in the same way. And so, as Hugo said, IOTA started it, and that was wonderful, but they chose the DAG, and the DAG didn't converge, so that didn't work, and they used the coordinator, which was totally centralized, which ruined the whole point of it. But when you look at it and you think about it, it's like, how else could it be? I even saw a post that said that the original Bitcoin didn't pay the miners. You did have the burn, and Satoshi added that after discussing, with somebody, and that's clearly worked that clearly worked beautifully because miners jumped on board to mine the chain, and they were getting paid. But the price they have paid. And so, the price they have paid is that now we are staring down the barrel of a centralized mining system, which totally breaks the whole point of the blockchain in the first place. And so I guess, is it short-term gains versus long-term vision? And in the long term, the only chain I know that doesn't have any centralizing factors is Minima. And that's not nothing. As Hugo says, investors and retail and businesses are starting to understand a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit about these differences. And I guess in the long run, it just has to, we have to show that we are decentralized and that we do what we do without having the issues that all the other chains are currently facing. And it's almost as if people are prepared to overlook those issues as long as they're making money. Yeah, they don't care if Bitcoin's centralized, as long as Bitcoin price goes up. Ethereum doesn't care that nobody runs an Ethereum node because people are still using it. And maybe the trust model assumptions are now changing. But I do believe that there is no better base to start from. Now, how that pans out in the future, if you could start today and there wasn't any blockchain out there and I could pick the cherry pick and I could choose which bits of which chain I'd use, I'd come up with Minima again. I'm pretty sure other chains would do that too, because we are starting to see in real time all of these issues appearing. You want your protocol to be finished, you want it to be quantum secure, and you want it to be, cooperatively mined rather than competitively mined, because otherwise you're going to have this mining centralization, and there's just really no other solution to this. And all the squirming and all the different ways, and good luck to Luke when he's trying to do his the ocean mining pool that allows you to build your own templates for things in an attempt to stop the centralization. These are band-aids on top of a really systemic issue that isn't going to be fixed with a band-aid. It really needs to be done at a really low level, and you need to understand why these issues are turning up. And Minima doesn't have these issues. I can't make it more obvious than that. That's what I can say about it.
Cool. I'm going to crack on because I've got some time to get through them. So, last question from British is: how do you plan on helping the broader crypto community understand that the end goal of blockchain was always going to be a protocol running autonomously in the background of their phones and other devices? Now, I think to answer that is, when something's truly revolutionary, it always looks obvious in hindsight. We're still in the phase when the status quo, which is sort of semi-decentralized networks, are doing an okay job. But once you actually, once sort of form factors actually start to take shape, and it becomes a reality of the fact that everything's going to have to become shrunk into a certain size, and then we become embedded on devices autonomously running in the background, delivering utility to everyday tasks, then everyone will look back on it and say, well, that was obvious, that was the right decision. Some of you will remember the internet in the old days used to be AOL and Yahoo, and everyone thought that's how the internet was going to be. But centralized entities controlling everything, really. And then Google came along and blew that concept apart completely. And I think that Minima is on a similar journey in that, Minima will be that moment. We're not there yet, but it will be that moment when everyone goes, well, obviously you collaborate rather than compete. And so that's where I think we take it from there, basically. We have another question now from M95. This one's for you, actually, Paddy. So, given all the corruption in the world, would it be possible to create a decentralized voting online polling station through a Minima app? If so, how would that work, confirming voter eligibility and one vote per voter, etc.? Does this already exist, or is someone maybe working on something similar?
I think voting is a very interesting topic, actually, because there's many different ways that you can go about it. So if you give someone a vote, are they allowed to sell that vote? I have no issue with them selling that vote. If you've given someone the ability to say, look, you can cast this way or that way, whether somebody off-chain says, I'll give you £10 if you vote this way, then there's no way of you knowing that. So there's no way that you can stop that. And so whether you want it or not is irrelevant. What you need to do is not give that person the vote. You need to give people the vote who aren't going to sell their vote, or is that even what I'm saying is that that's a valid vote. If he says, look, I'm prepared to sell my vote for £10. Yeah. And I'm prepared to give, so the way you could do it is you'd have an address with a yes or a no. And then you'd have a token, and you give the tokens to the users, and you say, users, send it to the yes or the no. Here's the question. Be a beautiful mini dApp. In fact, that's a nice mini dApp that someone could write. And if somebody writes that mini dApp, I'm sure there's a whole big bunch of native Minima waiting for you. But that's a very simple way of doing it, where you could just create a token per vote with a one answer or another answer. You can distribute the token, and they can send the token to either answer, and that's it. But when you're saying one person, one vote and corruption and all of these things, these are very subjective topics. You know what I mean? It's like am I allowed to sell my vote? If you're going to give me the ability to do it, then that's also a battlefield. It's like, well, then what are you going to give me to vote this way? If you're offering me a reward, if you're saying, look, are you going to vote for no taxes? I would vote for that. But if somebody came to you and said, look, I'm going to give you £20,000 not to vote for that, but you're going to save £50,000, I won't accept £20,000. But if you then say, look, I'm going to give you £51,000, then I would accept that, wouldn't I? And then but interestingly, this game sorts itself out. The free market has a way of doing this, because it would then be impossible for him to actually pay enough to stop you from stopping the taxes. If he said, look, I need you to say that you want the taxes, but I'm going to give you the money. He can't do that for everybody. You know what I mean? So it's like this game does actually level itself out. What you want is you want to understand the dynamics of the game that you have written, and then you want it to play out. And you don't want to get involved in but if you think that somebody can do that, then and it matters to you, if you want people to make a vote without having to have any other incentives put on them, that's not really how voting works. Everybody is bribed in some way to make a vote. Everybody thinks that something that they want is going to happen when they vote one way or another. So, yes, it's perfectly possible to write a voting system running on minima. Yes, it would be incorruptible in that you would get a result at the end where you either had yes or no, and we'd all have it on the blockchain, and you wouldn't have to trust anybody to count the votes, which is the issue I see. But I think the idea of being able to ensure that people weren't being bribed to vote one way or the other is just the wrong way to think about voting. Everybody's bribed. Everybody's offered something, and they're like, well, do you want to vote for these people or these people? You know, the Labour say they're going to give you the money from him, and the Conservatives say they're not. So I vote for, the party that I think is going to be best for me. Just the fact that it's distilled down into somebody saying, here's £10, vote the way I tell you, let me see you doing that transaction on your wallet now. It's an interesting concept, voting, and perfectly doable on minima, would work really nicely as a mini dApp, and if somebody wanted to write it, that would be fine. But you have to reel in your expectations about what voting actually is and why people vote a certain way, and not be confused by the fact that, look, he paid him to vote that way, and it's like everybody gets paid. Everybody's getting an incentive to vote one way or the other, whether it's as clear cut as a £10 note, or whether it's not and it's some other rather more abstract reward that I'm going to receive, is neither here nor there.
Cool.
That's what I think.
So I've got questions now, a number of questions from Yuri 9844 regarding ARM and everything like that. So I'm going to go through those questions and answer them as I go. So what is the current development stage of the Minima chip? So at the moment, we're at the stage of architecture scoping. So we've completed the high-level technical assessment, and we're working with ARM and potentially Siemens to identify optimal designs for silicon and integration. Now, I think also it's worth mentioning at this stage that there aren't many. This is not just a partnership with a project in Web 2, Web 3, where partnerships come and go very easily in Web 3. This was a partnership where it took us 4 months of work to go through the due diligence and the technical due diligence with ARM for them to accept us onto this access program. And there's less than 100 companies in the entire world, let alone Web3 companies, but all Web2 companies that are actually on this access program. So there's a lot of work that's gone into that. And now that we're on that, the next stage is design specifications for logic minimization and power optimization and edge native security and everything like that. So the next question was, is the prototype already functional? Are you still in the design validation stage? So we are still in the design validation stage. Well, not in terms of validation of can we be part of the ARM access program, but we are in terms of validation of exactly how it will be done and how it will be achieved. And so next question is, will the upcoming prototype be fully operational chip that runs a minimum node, or will it be a partial proof of concept focused on specific functionality? So the ultimate goal here is full node functionality on chip, but the initial iterations may isolate certain subsystems first to then accelerate the testing. Next question is, who will manufacture the prototype chip? Is it TSMC or are there multiple foundries being considered? So at this stage, it's too early to confirm specific foundries, but we are going to be leveraging ARM's established partner ecosystem, and this could include TSMC or others depending on final specs, volume, and packaging requirements. Next question is, will you publish technical specs or a data sheet of the prototype when ready? And so, yes, once we've achieved the tape out and validated the initial performance data, and technical specifications will be published by us. And this will cover things like power usage, on-chain sync times, compute capacity, and connectivity standards. Next question is, will the prototype be publicly demonstrated? And if so, when and in what form? So, e.g., real hardware demo, testnet integration with Omnia the Omnia layer, etc. So, yes, in 2025, so this year, we do aim to share validated design simulation results publicly. The physical hardware demo will follow next year as the prototype starts its fabrication and validation. And then mass production and adoption. Question is, assuming prototype is successful, when would you estimate mass production could realistically begin? 2026 or later? So our plan is that pilot production will be in late 26. And this will depend obviously on foundry scheduling and downstream packaging, stuff like that. So yeah, but end of 2026 is our plan. And then the final question on this, no, not quite the final question, almost final question on this is, what's the estimated timeline between working prototype and actual commercial use cases? So we have already engaged with industrial partners like Siemens. The design licensing can also begin before we've entered full mass production. And once the validated hardware is ready, we then move quickly to enable the pre-orders for pilot deployments, OEM licensing deals, and embedded integrations into smart devices. And the partners, from an investment perspective, that we're talking to will be big helpers on this side of things as well. And it says, another question is, have any hardware or IoT companies already signed NDAs or expressed strong interest in integrating minimum chip into their products? Yes, Siemens is the first one. And then how do you plan to balance decentralization with mass adoption when the chips go live? Effectively, each chip becomes a self-sovereign actor in the network. So it won't be any different to how Minima runs today, as each chip will run their own node. So there isn't an element of centralization. Obviously, we have centralized management tools, but each device itself will be running a full node in its own right. And final question, last question, no, not last question, so more questions on this. For example, will there be open access to hardware designs, risks v, or will it remain proprietary? So our current focus is ARM architecture due to the established ecosystem and the market dominance, but risk v remains something that we're considering for future iterations to allow greater openness and accessibility for some partners. The balance obviously depends for us in terms of commercial viability and market demand. And then the final question on this area, thank you for all your questions, is there a risk that the chip development could face multi-year delays due to fab constraints or lack of capital? How are you mitigating this? So, chip manufacturing does always carry inherent risks, but we are proactively mitigating this through via a number of things. Firstly, we are very much capital raising based on the concept of the chip manufacturer. So the investors that we're looking at aren't looking for a very quick flip on a meme coin. They know that this is going to take time, and they know that it's going to continue to require capital to be injected into this. So on milestones, then capital will be prepared for that. And the investors that we're talking to have deep pockets. So we know that they are good to help us on that journey. And also what we're doing as well is we're creating a modular design approach so that we can stage the functionality and minimize fabrication cycles. And also, what we're going to be doing is having partner alignments to share the R&D load. So with ARM and with Siemens, they will all be partners of ours. So then we will be able to have resources shared with them and ourselves to actually sort of make the most efficient use of the capital that we do have. So that is that section of the questions. On a number of different questions now. We
Can I
have.
just chip in one very quickly about this whole chip stuff, because I know people get excited about this chip stuff. Obviously, stuffing Minima in its entirety onto a chip is very cool, and that's what we're trying to do. And good luck to us. We're trying to get that done. There are obviously other levels that we can attain. Since Minima, basically, the entire cryptographic security of the network is based on a hash function. Yeah, our signing, our mining, our block production, our blockchain, everything is dependent on, the SHA-3 hash. If you only had a chip that allowed you to do SHA-3 hashing faster, that would already be a massive boost to the network. Minima currently has been installed on every device we've tried to install Minima. It's worked. We're on the head units of cars. That's not a powerful head unit, but we're on the head units of cars. We're on the smallest Pi devices where, I've almost got us running on my watch. We're running on every single device that I can possibly, other than a bloody iPhone. We're running in WebAssembly in a browser. So on every device that we have attempted to install Minima, it has worked. And I think that in and of itself says a lot to its compatibility with whatever small devices we can come up with in the future. So every little bit, it's a layered process and we take small steps along the way, but there has been no issue so far in trying to integrate our very compact blockchain with our very, very fast sync times. Anybody who's run Minima knows how fast it takes to sync up. And so, there are other levels that we can attain before we go fully on one chip, 64, bang, off you go. You can do it. We don't need that in its entirety to get some of the benefits of this. I'd love to try and install it on a Samsung fridge. I don't think I've been given one of those yet, but I'm sure it would work. So there are other levels that can be attained on our journey towards full integration onto one chip.
Cool. Thanks, Paddy. So next question from Fatal Sobriety. When will the new exchange be launched? So we're in talks with a number of bigger exchanges, including a tier 1 exchange. Normally, exchanges prefer to list pre-TGE projects so that they can basically sell into the hype. But I'm happy to say that definitely in recent months, we've seen a shift with more reputable exchanges that are looking at ways to back quality projects like ours in order to help elevate the space as a whole. And so we hope to be able to make an announcement on that very soon. So again, lots of positive conversations, and not all purely based on trading volumes and liquidity at this stage. They're also looking at project quality as well. Next question is... where are we? So, question from British. Have there been talks with phone brands about blockchain on chip? So yeah, we have had lots of conversations in the past with telcos. But when we do, we will bring this conversation of a blockchain chip to them, and specifically in China and South Korea. We've seen lots of projects that are building specific phones to include blockchain functionality, but by having blockchain on chip, we will be able to bring that blockchain functionality to any hardware device, not just expensive bespoke hardware, and that's where we think the future is. Next question is, I think we've talked about stress testing Omnia layer 2, so I'll leave that one. So in terms of there is no doubt chips of future. Does the team have any plans for the chip revenue? So yeah, basically, in terms of chip revenue, again, obviously that is we're definitely obviously planning to have revenue from that, and we will have a proprietary version within Minima AG. So the revenue will be there, and then we'll use the Minima Success program for that as well, so that we can deliver revenue for sustainability, but also token holder value as well. And
just chip in on that one little issue about open sourcing and closed sourcing stuff. And it's like, if we did have a chip that ran Minima, would it be a good idea to say no, only the Americans can use this, or would it be a good idea to say, Huawei, off you go, America, if you want to, off you go, India, if you want to, off you go? Because the value accrual system of these blockchains is that all the value of everything that occurs on Minima accrues in Minima. Minima is the ultimate value accrual. Frankly, money made by obviously it's wonderful, and I hope we can make the money because that gives us more developers and etc. that we can then work on. But the truth is that anything that is built on top of minima, if it works, helps demand for minima, and demand directly impacts price. It's as simple as that. So
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
say that what you want to do is get as many people as possible to use as much of your tech stack as possible. And then all of you would benefit because as minima holders, that is where the value accrual takes place. There will be other places along the tech stack and other companies along the way that can extract some value from it if they provide something of use. But the eventual goal is for the price of minima to accrue the value that all of this tech, aids in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as I say, it's always a balance between the long-term play of minimum accrual value to the coin, but also revenue generation to actually build all the stuff that then drives revenue, drives usage for the chip and usage for the tokens as well. So it's a balance, and I think that's the balance that we are playing at the moment. Next question is so actually there's a question about Integritas, but I think that's also been answered. Another question is when will Ivan, I'm assuming Ivan on tech, cover minima in a big way on social media? What we found is that people only listen when the market is moving in a positive way. So what we're doing is we're saving up the right messages for Ivan to cover off when that market is receptive. So yeah, we're absolutely still in touch and working with Ivan. We're just biding our time to make sure that we're not shouting into a void. So in terms of another question from Samuel as well. So that was Samuel question. Another Samuel question is what's the progress with the Siemens partnership? So we are actually meeting with them this evening, Siemens, because they're very supportive of our development roadmap, and we will be giving more of an update once we've had those meetings with them on that. Just having a look, I suppose we were over time, but there are a few questions that I saw. Actually, one more, I think, actually from Adam, if you're still there, I think there's a question for you here from Punished Plainview. Is hello team, thanks for the opportunity to get involved with the MMA. Regarding McLaren partnership in GT4, I do believe that the chance of nurturing a relationship like that should be cheered and encouraged. Are there any updates for future collaborations or developments in racing matters?
Yeah. So last year, obviously, we had great success in our partnership in the racing world. We still have open dialogue, both with a very successful team in the current Formula One series, with the FIA management, and also with our collaboration partner that we were putting blockchain nodes in GT3 and GT4 cars. We've been a little quiet on that front because we've been focusing on our rollout of Integritas. But the dialogue is still there, and there's a keen interaction. But from our perspective, we are always making sure that the use case is clear, which is why would cars or why would race teams want to use blockchain technology? And in case of cars, is making sure that the communication is absolutely secure, and there is essentially a censorship-resistant element to the information that's being shared for races. So when we have time to lift our eyes up from Integritas, we will then start pursuing these exciting partnerships.
Cool, thank you. Excellent. Conscious of time, so we have gone a bit over, but I wanted to make sure we tried to answer all the questions. Nia, are there any other questions that are worth highlighting from the chat?
I mean, there's a big question that just got shared in the Stage Questions channel by Tech regarding quantum, the chips and their quantum resistance, but I think it's too big. So I think
the video explains it. We're ready.
The video
we're ready
explains
for it.
But
yeah, we're
they're
ready.
interesting questions. Anyways, I think we should just wrap it up here. We're 13 minutes over the line, and we've done very well. Lots of questions answered. So
cool. All right, perfect. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Great to see you all. Appreciate your
indeed.
Can I just finish off by saying, sorry, just my wrap up. I can tell that all the chat is about, look, how's this meeting and how's that, and how's this and all of this. Because you want NGU. Everybody wants NGU, yeah. And what I'll say is that the only objective, definitive way of NGU is demand for block space. Because demand for block space is converted into demand for minima, because you have to have minima to run on the block space. And demand for minima, by definition, puts price up. So if there is anything that can be done to help minima, we need to increase the demand for the block space that minima has. And that's the thing that needs to happen. Regardless of everything else that is going on, that is the basic component that allows your chain to progress upward through the scales that it can. So if there's anything that you can do to improve that, I would suggest you do that. Whatever that block space is used for, whether it's chainmail or whether it's SOCO with your, meme coin dexes, or whether it's future caching this or blah blah blah. That's the basic, most important thing that the blockchain needs to do. You need to have demand for block space, which means demand for minima, which by definition means price must go up because demand, is directly proportional to that.